We keep not hating on Kyle Shanahan for too many minutes.
Well, lead the way, Mark.
This is ridiculous.
Lead us in hatred of Kyle Shanahan.
I've had it.
What fires you up the most about Kyle Shanahan?
The whole,
See, you can't even do it seriously.
Making the playoffs every year.
You can't even do it seriously.
And then getting all the way to the end and being in overtime and then ticking me off because you don't score because you're supposed to score on every drive because you're a little genius over there with your flat bill and your sneakers. Jerk.
What about his squandering of timeouts and his Chokosaurus Rex act in overtime? What about that? You're probably delighted by that. Can't win the big one. But, let's give him a pass. Super Bowl or have an extension.
Try again.
Yep, and they will. In the meantime, let's rip him, somebody.
Let's go to Jay.
Let's rip this guy.
Let's go to Jay in San Jose. Hi, Jay. What are you doing?
What's up, fellas?
What's up?
I'm ready. I'm ready to rip them.
Let's go.
I'm fully ready to rip them.
Let's go.
Let's do this, Jay.
I've had enough.
And I don't like to rip anybody, but hey, man, this has gone on for multiple games, multiple seasons, right?
What is this? Define this.
Let him eat. Let Jay
No, he's
eat.
gonna eat.
Let
But
him
what
eat.
I want to understand. This has gone on. What is this?
No, this is the arrogance of blowing the biggest game, walking away after the game, and not having to explain anything to anyone in regards to what your role is in that game, other than the standard coach talk that we all hear from everybody. So no slander from when he got Trey Lance, didn't work out, when he had all these players, all these all-pro players that didn't work out. It's either our quarterback at the time, which, Garoppolo, it's his fault, or it's, the defense didn't step up, or it's this, or it's that. I want that accountability piece because I feel like until he actually says it, then he can actually address it moving forward. He never addressed it after the Falcons game, and he wasn't even our coach then.
Right, because he wasn't the coach. I have a complete mental block for the whole Falcons thing. We've never even again, I could go through the last 10 Super Bowls, and most of you don't even know who the offensive coordinator was. So it's
Kyle Shanahan again.
Yeah, super unfair, the whole Falcons thing. Let's talk about the 49ers losses. Those are the only ones I give a rip about anyway. But, Jay, I guess let me ask it this way. This thing that you're asking Kyle to do you hear other coaches do it? Do you hear, let's go last year, Doug Peterson, did he sit in front of a microphone and, or wasn't Doug Peterson?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
I'm getting confused there. Sirianni, did he sit down with you and go, all right, I got a list of all the things that I did wrong in that game? I missed that presser. Did you see it?
I did not see that.
Okay.
No.
What happened the year before? Who was in the Super Bowl?
Also hasn't been to multiple. But there's context that's missing. This is a reoccurring theme with this one coach.
Twice.
Everybody sees it.
Twice
in the biggest game.
Right.
There's been other games for Niner fans.
I get again, Jay. I guess where, and this is that old adage, and we it's a boring old comparison because we do it a lot. But the whole would you rather have loved or lost, and or never have loved at all? When I hear someone go, and he's been to the Super Bowl multiple times and messed it up, and I'm like, right, he's been to the Super Bowl multiple times
And messed it up.
But that's really hard to get to the Super Bowl multiple times. And actually, I reject the idea that you seem to suddenly be falling into.
Oh, I'm just playing. I'm playing a little bit of a role. But I also realize that he's been there twice and he's 0-2.
He's been there
and
twice.
Only 5 coaches have been 2 or more times and not won it, and he's one of them.
He's been there twice, and I'm not going to say he was perfect in the game by any stretch. There's plenty of stuff we can question, but I'm going to reject the idea of Kyle went to Super Bowl, Kyle messed up, Niners lose. If that's
too simplistic.
Come on, man.
But Kyle went to the Super Bowl. Kyle's team messed up, and they lost. So why did the team mess up? And you can look at all the different things that they messed up on, and it all falls at the feet of the same guy because you're the head coach. It doesn't mean it's his fault that Spencer Burford went the wrong way or Darrell Luter Jr. staggered into a punt and didn't hear an audible call, or that Christian McCaffrey fumbled. Is that Shanahan's fault? No, none of those are.
So how do you separate that?
Well, you don't separate any of it. It all comes back to the same spot, which is your team didn't win, and your head coach is responsible for your team. And so at the very end of it, he's responsible.
But all the things that you point to as to why they didn't lose aren't his fault, but it's his fault.
They're not all his fault, but collectively, when you have a team that's not buttoned up, it falls on the position coaches and the head coach.
I think there are
doesn't mean he needs to be fired.
Well, but I think there are pieces of what they did that are quote unquote not buttoned up. Christian McCaffrey fumbling is not they weren't buttoned up. Guy fumbled.
That defense made a good play. They jarred the ball free.
He fumbled.
Sure.
He fumbled. Like, life happens. These are human beings. They're not going to go out and nail every single play. So.
Right, but the plays that were pivotal, the plays that were there to be made, the plays that you needed to make to win the game, you didn't make. And that, to me, is a thing that you look at and you go, why? And is it because the individual? Sure. The players have to make plays. Coaches put the players in position. Players make plays to win the game. And they didn't. So it's too bad.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
It's on his resume. I get it. Nicholas and Martinez. Hey, Nicholas, what you doing?
What's up, gentlemen? How you guys doing today?
We're great.
Good, yeah.
Great. So, first off, I just want to say this. The whole 40 whiner theme, it's never felt more relevant than now. And it really kind of gets under my skin because as a fan base, we really do need to grow. And this sucks. It really does. But here we are, a few days after. Hopefully, for the faithful, acceptance has started to sink in a little bit, and you kind of get a bigger picture, which is what I want to talk about. I don't really want to talk about specifics because there's so many things that they didn't go our way in that game. We'll just leave it at that. But just generally speaking, right, when it comes down to Wilkes, here's the thing. He was going to leave either way. He was already interviewing for other positions. Rather he won the Super Bowl or obviously didn't win the Super Bowl, we were going to get rid of him or he was going to be with another team. Fact of the matter. As Niner fans, we got to get used to that. It's fine. We've lost DCs, year after year. It wasn't a good fit. We all saw that. If you didn't see it, you should go back and not just watch the game, watch the entire season. All over, up to the point where they bullied him to come down to the field. That wasn't his forte. That wasn't his cup of tea. Publicly stated, I wasn't running my scheme. Great, whatever. That's just the general stuff. The other thing I want to speak on is Kyle Shanahan as a head coach and OC. The man needs help. If he's going to continue to shift blame or not even speak to what his faults are, it can't just be a DC that's going to leave or stay or go. He needs an OC. It's obvious that when the moment is big, it's just not there and he can't come through, and I don't know why. And I was listening to other callers talking about checkpoints and people to say, hey, what about this or what about that? It doesn't seem like anybody's questioning Kyle when it comes to this stuff. And at the end of the day, it is a team sport. We take it as a loss, guys. The last thing that I'm going to leave you guys with, hey, man, it was a great season. It's been a few great seasons. We have a bright future. If we can't get that O-line protected, here's where we'll end this call. If we don't protect Brock Purdy and Brock Purdy gets hurt because of our O-line next year, then I'm out on Kyle. Because then we're looking for another quarterback again. And he bailed us out this year. And he bailed us out last year. So at that point, I'll be out. I'll be out on Kyle.
Yeah, Nicholas, it's a really good call. There's a lot to chew on there. And while I understand that last point, and I think it's a good one with regard to the offensive line needing to be different, I think it's a very slippery slope to go into a season and say, this one player right here, if they get hurt, I'm out on the head coach.
And you never know how he gets hurt.
Yeah, right. You be careful.
It could be a Jimmy G by himself, quarterback run where he tries to cut back and gets hurt.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah. But I get the sentiment that you're going at, which is, and okay, what do we think Kyle should do better? All right, let me see if I can flex this muscle a little bit. Let me see. because I know I live in his guest house. And
Yeah.
all in him Shanahan and all that stuff.
All that and more.
All right. I think that Kyle Shanahan focused, there's three things. The offensive line, he focused too much on the run aspects of their game plan this year. I do think that's probably because in the offseason he wasn't 100% sure what the hell was even going on at the quarterback position. Okay. But in the end, that decision bit the 49ers a little bit. I also think, and these next 2 points seem to fly in the face of one another, but let me see if I can make them. I think that he made a mistake in going away from his tree in hiring a defensive coordinator. I think he should have stayed true to what he does. But at the same time, and maybe this is one of the reasons that I identify with Kyle Shanahan, I'll try to be as vulnerable as I can here. I think he and I struggle from the same place. I think we're control freaks. And that's not something that's easy to release, especially when what you do is going well. You tend to be like, okay. And a lot of people who do have that characteristic, it's very, very difficult. It's actually a trust thing. It's like, do I trust other people to step in and do what I think I can do really well or in a leadership position? I'll give you an example. I was reading a thing on, Instagram sends you all this stuff that is like, I don't know, these phones are listening to us. So you say something out loud, and the next thing you know, your Instagram,
no doubt.
right? They're listening to us. So I was getting this thing, and I was probably talking out loud in my house about the kids, you need to do more chores around here. You need to do more chores. Next thing you know, I'm getting all this stuff on Instagram about the kids and doing chores. And I realized, through the years, I've done a terrible job of delegating. Why?
It's hard when you're a control guy.
Because I'm a control freak.
Yeah.
And I don't want my kids doing the dishes because when they do, I take the dishes out of the cabinet and there's crap all over the dishes.
Them, yeah.
You gotta rewash them. But I also realize that's not setting them up for their best selves. They've got to have some responsibility. They've got to do it.
And it drives you down to a nub.
Crazy.
Because you're doing everything and you feel like you have to do everything where if you would just take a step back and, maybe let somebody else call the plays.
So I don't think anybody else is going to call the plays.
Right.
But
I don't think anyone else is going to come in and help him with game management either.
Probably
because
not.
I think you're right about Kyle Shanahan.
He's a control freak. He's a control freak.
Well, most of these guys are.
Right, and
honestly.
exactly. Like, Bill Belichick will be a DC. Good luck. Control freak, like the highest level. Control freak. And so I don't think, that's got such a negative connotation, and there are some negative aspects to it, but it's not a horrible thing either when you're in a leadership position and you've had a lot of success. So could Kyle open up to some more ideas? Yeah, sure. But I would also remind everybody who wants that if you do talk to people, talk to players, like current defensive players, will tell you, they're like, the hardest thing in the hell to figure out and cover is a Kyle Shanahan offense. So why do fans watching on TV go, well, this situational play caller, this moron can't figure it out in the big game? But people who are in the game are like, this is as difficult and complicated as it gets.
Well, sometimes it's more difficult than it needs to be. And that is, at times, that's a criticism. And I also think that the criticisms of Kyle Shanahan, for the most part, are not about his play calling or his play design. It's the other stuff. And that's where people look at it and say, would you be better served to have somebody in there to help you with clock management and help you with game management and help you with things like overtime navigation, to where your team knows exactly what the rules are and maybe you have a more clear design on what you want to do in overtime, because Kyle's doing a lot. He's like you with 4 jobs and 3 kids, and you're trying to do everything. And, when you try to do everything at that level, there are going to be things that fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
No, dude, believe me.
Yeah.
And I think about myself not only as a parent and as a partner, because I'm not the controlling member of my household. And so sometimes I say to my partner, the lovely supper. What can I do to help you? Because I want to take things off of her plate.
Nothing.
And exactly.
Fine.
I got it.
Right.
I got it. It's okay. You got it. And, I'm more likely, and I think about Steve Kerr and the way he coaches, he's not a control freak, and he empowers
Not
his
at all.
assistants, and he allows everyone to have a voice. And, sometimes maybe that's not the right way. There's a happy medium in there somewhere. But for Shanahan, you're going to keep doing it a certain way, and you're going to get all the way to the end, and you got to find a way to get over the hump.
Let's think about this also for a second. It's not good. For those of you who were like, gosh, Kyle, could you stop being such a control freak? Well, let's look what happened last offseason. Kyle opened his mind and went, let's get a defensive coordinator. He does it a little bit differently. Now, we want him to do kind of our way, but we also like what he does, and he's an accomplished coach, so we'll blend what he does with what we do, and we'll have this really good thing. And then it didn't work. Uh-oh. What does the control freak do when the control freak opens said mind and that ends up being not a good thing?
Well, he buries the defensive coordinator at the end of the Minnesota game, and then he calls timeout in the Super Bowl because he's, so in charge of what has to happen. He doesn't like the scheme, and he calls timeout.
He goes back to more control.
Right.
Exactly. So I would expect some of that this offseason, whether we like it or not.